The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Do you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of Face the Nation show right here on the Alternative Digital TV. My name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga, and every particular Friday, we are always here having a conversation with Uganda. I am privileged to be in Mbunga, right here in Kampala city, and I'm having a conversation with a senior citizen of the land, Mr. Israel Mayengo. He is a former member of parliament and of course a former minister and a senior citizen of the land. We came in to check in on him, how he is especially, but also what is his take on some of the issues that are happening in the country. Please join the conversation at the Alternative Uganda at Digitalk TV. We're streaming on either platform, so you can either watch us on Facebook or on YouTube. And in case you have a comment, query, or any issue that you want to share with us, feel free to send in your feedback. We always want to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe. Every time you subscribe, we get to bring you better guests and better prepare for you as the Alternative Digital TV. Without any further ado, Allow me welcome our guest for this evening, Mr. Israel Mayengo. It's an honor for me to host you, sir, and thank you for facing the nation.
Thank you for inviting me.
How are you?
I'm reasonably all right.
Because it's been a while since you're not often in the news, and someone is saying maybe you're in retirement. How is the process and how is Uganda treating you?
Well, Uganda is treating me no better way than it's treating any other citizens. I don't know whether I'm in retirement or not.
Yeah.
Because your being here indicates that I'm not quite in retirement.
Exactly.
Because I still think about what's going on and many times check on it.
This week we celebrated the Uganda Matters Day, and it's people who gave their lives for the ultimate belief they had. What is your comment on this particular day? But also, do you see martyrs in this country anymore? Do you see that spirit of martyrdom in today's generation? Let's start from there.
I don't know whether it's martyrdom in religion or martyrdom in politics. There is, of course, a degree of sacrifice in many of the things which are going on. More in politics than in religion. We don't have any martyrs anymore. I think there are times when human beings become excited and they do things which otherwise are difficult to do. There was zeal, eagerness to do certain things 100 years ago, which is lacking at the moment. I do not know whether today, if you went to Lubaga and asked all the priests together and asked them, who among you is ready? And who confirms that Jesus Christ will come back?
Yes, sir.
And for that reason, who believes that definitely there will be resurrection? If those are there,
Yes, sir.
let's go and burn them at Namugongo.
What happened to the zeal? You mentioned the word zeal. What happened?
Would you get one? Would you get martyrs? Most likely not. Why?
Yeah.
The zeal, what should I call it? It's a kind of fanaticism, which I think is particularly more in Africa than elsewhere. How many martyrs do you have in USA? Not more than 3. I mean, those canonized martyrs, not more than 3.
Yes, sir.
In England, I don't know how many saints there are, but I believe they can't even be 20.
Yes.
I'm talking of martyrs rather than Saint Michael. Saint Michael is just a brand of clothes.
Yes, sir.
So, I believe that the fanaticism has come down. Do you know that those churches that you are seeing at Namirembe and the cathedral at Rubaga
Yes, sir.
were built when there were no mechanical means here? There were no bulldozers, not even tippers for carrying the bricks.
Yeah.
The people were so fanatic about religion, they carried the bricks in baskets.
The passion.
All the way from Kitebi, near where the Kabaka's playground is, and carried the bricks all the way up to the river, and built the cathedral, which is so big. They carried the bricks to Namirembe and built that cathedral.
Wow.
The former ambassador to the United Nations, a gentleman who passed away in 2007, Apollo Chironde, was a grandson of Sir Apollo Kagwa. He told me himself that he saw his grandfather carrying bricks to Namirembe to build that cathedral.
Yes.
If an earthquake came today and Namirembe Cathedral crashed, and Rubaga Cathedral crashed, I don't know how many would build it without the collection of money. Those who built it were not paid anything. Indeed, the nickname of the Rubaga Hill was Sikamdali. Mdali Church, the cross. everybody who worked at the construction of the site was given a cross,
A rosary.
a rosary to wear. And that was all.
Yeah.
People would get tired climbing the hill
Wow.
with the bricks and throw them away and say, "Sikam down." Meaning,
Calm down.
just a course that I'm going to get.
Yes. But it also shows the discipline, the commitment they had.
That's what I'm talking about. Exactly. A height of being fanaticism. And that also, by the way, is also in politics now.
Okay, before we even delve into the politics, there is Heroes Day coming up next week. And people will be gathering all over Kololo to celebrate the national heroes of the country. Is there a worth of celebrating?
No.
Why do you say that?
Uganda, at the moment, does not have real heroes. They become heroes after defeating their fellow Ugandans. Is a hero in Uganda considered a hero in Nigeria? Suppose this NIM war was won by Obote. Would we consider Obote's army men heroes who in the south? We think they are villains.
Yeah. Yes.
So we don't have a national hero here. A national hero should be one who defends the entire country. This is what we have at tribal wars.
We have liberators, sir. Liberators, you've heard of that word? Yeah, so they are liberators, and that they are worth celebrating, according to them.
They are not worth celebrating. Because in the first place, I told you that I was in the war of 1979. Physically, I was a soldier.
You fought?
Were we fighting an enemy from outside Uganda?
No.
So who were we? We were Ugandans.
Yes.
Liberating ourselves from war. Who?
From a certain Ugandan who had become dictatorial.
So now you can see that the entire problem is that we have not been able to get together to fashion out, to work out how we should govern ourselves.
What is Uganda's biggest problem in your regard?
Selfishness. I don't think it's anything else. Uganda's biggest problem is selfishness. When a Muganda becomes president, he wants the Baganda in everything that the government has. When a Mnyankole becomes president, he wants the same. When someone from the north becomes president, he wants his people in the government and everywhere. What do you call that? Isn't it selfishness? I think it is. It's not only in Uganda. It's almost all over the country, the continent. Why is it that the African countries have failed to form themselves in one country? Into one country just called Africa. Sometimes others want to call it the United States of Africa. I would not like to call it that. Simply say, call it Africa. And just say that's it. Of course, what prevents that from taking place? Selfishness. I have written a book which I'm a little bit afraid to put out. Book is called Unpopular Ideas. And in the unpopular ideas, one of the ideas is called the Berlin Conference of Addis Ababa. Those who remember history, remember the Berlin Conference of in Berlin.
1884.
1884.
Yes, sir.
Where the Europeans gathered and gave themselves the feeling that they had discovered Africa and that they owned it.
Yes.
And they divided it up, shared it among themselves. Each one arguing his case out and how much he should have. We all now realize that their interests were commercial. And they worked towards that end. Irrespective of what happened, they made all these boundaries of Africa in accordance with their selfish interests. Where in Europe do you see national boundaries which are straight? And if you were to ask the Europeans, who made the boundaries for their countries? Were they somebody from outside?
I don't think so.
Ours are definitely artificial. They will sit down and argue. This is Mount Elgon. It belongs to Uganda. And the other one will say, no, it belongs to Kenya. Okay. Let's settle it out. Let's draw the boundary over the top
Of the mountain.
Mount Elgon.
We take half.
Half of it is in Kenya, half of it is in Uganda. They did the same with Rwenzori. They did the same with many other things. The lakes.
So,
That's why you have the straight boundaries. The lakes, this one here,
yes,
called Naruvale, they make them Victoria
Victoria.
after their queen, you know.
Mm.
And all of them satisfied themselves that they had discovered it, in spite of the fact that many in Kisumu who led them to where it is, knew where it was.
Even the people who stayed here knew where it was.
And they were working on it, they were fishing, and they were living around it and on it as
So why are you calling
they started.
it the Berlin Conference of Ethiopia?
Why do I call it the Berlin Conference? Berlin is in quotes. In other words, a conference which resembles the Berlin Conference. To do what? To work out the boundaries. Because right now, it's a source of problems. Take one little bit from Uganda, and Uganda will complain. What caused the war of 1979?
Jingo Island.
Idi Amin took only 18 square miles from Tanzania. Tanzania has declared war upon Idi Amin to recover the 18 square miles.
Yes.
I went there shortly after Amin's men had left. They had destroyed everything in the 18 square miles called Kagera. They destroyed everything. When I'm saying everything, they destroyed all the houses. They destroyed the churches. Everything
It's okay.
everything that mattered.
Yes, sir.
They took away cows. They took away goats. They took everything.
Yes, sir.
They left only the cats and the grass and the banana plantations. They took even the women.
I can imagine.
When we got there in April 1979,
Yes.
the only thing we could see as evidence of their happiness were heaps of empty Uganda Waragi bottles. The celebration had gone to that extent.
I get you, sir.
But that little bit, Tanzania said we can't use it. Who gave it to Tanzania? The British in the Berlin Conference. What would have been the natural boundary if the people of Tanzania decided that Tanzania would end here and Uganda would end here? Probably, River Kagera would have been.
I get you. Yes, sir.
Look at the way the British divided up kingdoms. They divided up the kingdom of Congo. There was a Congo kingdom. Part of it now is in Angola. Part of it is in DRC. Part of it is in Congo Brazza. Part of it is in Uganda. They divided the communities irrespective of what the community is.
But after 60 years, yes.
You find Basamia in Uganda, Basamia in Kenya.
After 60 years, do we still have to look at these colonialists? How about we introspect in ourselves to say, maybe we have failed as Africans?
If we did that, we would have a Berlin Conference or the Addis Ababa.
Okay.
We would then say, how should we make these boundaries?
I get you.
They just took a piece of Rwanda and added it to Uganda.
I'm going to bring back the point of what you mentioned of selfishness. For me, I picked tribalism.
Self-tribalism is also caused by...
No, but one would say this system is not tribalistic. You have a vice president who's from Teso, a prime minister who's from Buganda and Bunyoro. You have a speaker who's from Teso. There is balance of power. Why do you say there isn't?
Those ones are all kind of, they don't have the power they should have. They don't have the responsibilities they should have. Right at the top is where it all matters. That's where selfishness is. As I said, it's not only in Uganda.
Yes, sir.
When you hear a Muganda wishing that the president be a Muganda, it is not that he loves Uganda so much. When you hear one saying, I wish that the president on this occasion is a Muslim. Why? Because he's the one I can approach, and talk to. He's the one I can tell my problems and interests. And if I don't meet him in the office, which is difficult, I'll meet him at the mosque, or at the other dua, or at the other Muslim function.
Okay.
He wants a Muganda president, but not only a Muganda president, a Muganda and a Muslim president.
It's particular.
This interests, selfish interests.
Okay.
How do we get out of that? By having, when they were settling the Kony issue in Acholi, they held a conference in England, in London, and they called it Kachope Madik. Kachope Madik. Kachoke Madik. The big conference. It was like the Berlin conference. But we need to have a dialogue, a conference, where people will get together, shed off their interests, recognize facts. One of the most important facts is that Uganda was not made by Ugandans. Uganda was made by Europeans.
Okay.
And since it was made by Europeans, it contains communities that were not familiar with each other.
Yes.
And since it contains those communities, we have to realize that those communities are here to stay.
Okay.
The tribes will not end. Let me tell you this.
Yes.
The tribes are not coming to an end here. And no tribes wishes to be extinct.
Yes.
Ask the Vagishu if they would wish to be extinct.
No.
They say no. Even the Bamba, who are insignificantly few, would they like to be ended, to come to an end, and say there are no more Bambas? They'll say no. Ask the Vanyankol, they'll say no. The Waganda, definitely no. So if they are not willing to be extinct, what is our problem? The problem is we have not been able to come together and settle how to govern ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm still with Mr. Israel Mayengo, a former legislator of the land and a senior citizen and a former minister. Honorable, I'm going to come to the issue. You were a founding member of UPM.
Indeed.
And that means you saw Museveni from the inception. How do you rate this gentleman from a country you saw that we may have not seen, but you saw where Uganda came from? You brought the leader that you have, who 40 years down the road is vying for power once more. If you are to paint a picture for a young mind there, how do you rate Museveni throughout up to today?
He has been an extremely enterprising character. Because judging from where he started and how he looked like, and steering his way all the way through these 40 years, you cannot fail to give him some kind of credit for being an enterprising, I shouldn't say leader, I should say ruler. There's a slight difference.
Why?
There's a slight difference. A leader has different interests from a ruler. A ruler, in ruling, there's the implication of oppressiveness. And here, it's not absent. When we started, incidentally, if you found me in my other home up there, I would have shown you the first manifesto of UPM, which I wrote myself in June 1980. Remember that when the party started, it was casually. It was not as these parties that are starting recently. It started out of a surprise move. We had an idea that there were going to be elections in December 1980. And we questioned ourselves, is the election going to be in parties or just together? It was on a Monday. And we said, tomorrow, which was Tuesday, we'll get together and decide whether to have this election in parties or not. And we agreed that we would meet at 2. We got there at 2. The staff at the parliament said, you're late, your friends were here at 10 in the morning, and they decided to have the elections in parties. And it's there. At that time, we were all young firebrands, around 40 each of us, Museveni no less, and all the others, Gonda, Kintu Museke, who was my classmate at King's College, and we understand we are all very young. We can't work with these characters. We are going to meet at 2, they meet at 10, and they
decide.
Such an important thing. Let's go make our own party. There was no fence at that time between Parliament and the City Council. So we walked to the City Council, to the hall. We gathered, about 40 of us, and said, let's have a...
Museveni inclusive? Or?
Exactly, inclusive. Let's have a party of our own. So we agreed to form a party. We called it the Uganda Patriotic Movement. And we elected its officials right there and there. Museveni was elected by president. I was elected vice president. We needed another vice president from the north, and another from the east, none from the west, because the west had the president. We elected the president, who was Kirunda Kivejinja. We elected the secretary general, who was Bidandi Sali. Those were literally the big 4. Museveni, Mayengo, Kirunda Kivejinja, Bidandi Sali.
Yes, sir.
But there was another one, the one who represented the East, the vice president, not so important. Another from the North, not so important, but he was there nevertheless.
Okay.
That was the beginning. None of us was not sure that there would not be enough money to move around Uganda in the process of campaigning, and none of us had the belief that we would win the election. Museveni no less.
Which you lost eventually. You only got one seat.
We really cared that we lost it.
Why did you care?
Because we knew from the beginning that we would not win. I mean, it would have been a miracle if we did. Yeah? So, the elections come to an end. And in January, I think about January 10th, Obote was sworn in as president and given advice that he had problem in the country. He had difficulty, he had problem, not from the Democratic Party.
The one that had lost.
The one that lost. He did not have problem with the Conservative Party, and that his real problem was the young fellows of UPA. And he was advised to collect them and rein them in. Put them in detention. They hurried up to collect their leader, Yoweri Museveni, whom they found had disappeared. Either in Luwero or somewhere in Kampala. Both are possible. The next one to be looked out for was myself.
Mayengo, the deputy.
They arrived at 7 in the morning. I had a home on not in my usual homes. I had another one where I was in the Makerere University Estate on Gaza Road. They arrived at 7 o'clock. I had left at 7 in the evening and went to Nairobi.
You knew?
They went to Bidandi home, and they found him there.
So you knew I was there.
Collected him and put him in prison for he spent 3 years.
Wow.
They went to look for Elisa Chironde, who was my teacher at King's College. I understand. But the body said, now leave that one, he has only one leg. They went to the lady, Rhoda Kalema, who is still alive. And I understand. That's what said, no, don't worry about that. So they took, basically we understand. The categories, the
Ndugurugunda.
Hakanagunda, Kintumisoke, all disappeared somewhere there in the countryside.
Okay. So you were at the inception of this political party and the vision of Mr. Museveni.
Now let me go on a little.
Yes, please.
When we got to Nairobi, Museveni now already had formed the PRA, People's Resistance Army. In Nairobi, in January 1981, we all agreed that what we had done in Moshi is what we should do in Nairobi. In Moshi, 30 of us gathered together, and we all represented 22 political groups which were opposed to Idi Amin's rule. And we said, if we did not join the 22 groups into one, Amin would not get out of it. So we merged the 22 groups in Moshi into one called the Uganda National Liberation Front.
UNLF.
So now, by the way, the 30 of us today, only 9 of us are still alive. There are 21 of them. Museveni was not one of us. I have to mention that. Some people confuse it.
He was not part of the Moshi.
Nairobi, we said, if we don't combine, if we don't merge the 4 groups which were arguing against Obote at that time, we would not defeat Obote. The 4 groups were Moses Ali's group called the Rescue Fund. My school met Andrew Kayira's group called the Uganda Freedom Movement,
UFM.
Professor Rule's group called Uganda Freedom Fighters, UFF, and Museveni's PRA, the President of the People's Resistance Army. So those 4 groups. And we said, if we combine them into one, then we have a chance of defeating Obote.
Okay.
So we held a Kachope Madi.
In London. Or in Nairobi. Yes.
We had a hotel out there in the villages, in the bushes, and spent 4 days talking about how to get together. We ran out of money. So we said, let's meet in our friends' homes. At that time, only 3 Ugandans had homes like here where you could park 10 cars and nobody would see them. And we were in an area called Lavington of Nairobi, which has rather well off. One of the homes belonged to a man called Sir John, I remember his other name, was a Mchiga fellow. The other one belonged to Mathew Chikaire, and I had also one. So we decided to meet at Mathew Chikaire's home. In a compound, like we would meet behind there. We spent 14 days discussing how to get together. Each day had a different chairman. Finally, on the 14th day, we agreed on a formula. And we drew up an agreement. And we decided to go and sign the agreement in the evening at a home of a friend of ours called Bone Katatumba, who passed away. On the hotel of Mayengo.
Yes.
Diplomat.
Yes, Diplomat Hotel.
So we went to his home at 8 in the evening to sign the agreement of joining together.
Okay.
Not all of us went. Each group sent 3 representatives. I was in the group, Museveni's group, with their Mama and Babas. Rule himself attended. Kaira came in person. Moses Ali sent somebody whom I have never seen again since that day. So, 3 from each group, 4 groups, 12 of us. We got there in the evening. The first thing was to elect a chairman of the group. We elected a chairman called Dr. Usase, who passed away 3 months ago in London and was brought back here. We elected the secretary to that meeting myself. We got out our draft agreement and read through it. Unknown to us, one of our friends had arrived in the home of Karuhanga a little earlier and had been entertained a lot of drinks. He looks at the agreement. So this is impossible. And he yelled and he quarreled under the influence of alcohol. He literally beat everybody. He almost beat everybody. He attacked the one who was with Professor Lee. Professor Lee intervened. He turned against Professor Lee. He nearly grabbed him. His chairman, Dr. Bisase, who belonged to FM, said, this can't be, you know. The next thing we had, the meeting is adjourned. I was the secretary. On the paper, I don't know one thing. The list of members were present.
You did not talk about anything.
So it broke up. The chairman had come from Mombasa. He said, we are now approaching midnight. He said, you have a car outside? I said, yes, I have one. Drive me to Savagari home. So I took him to Savagari home. Those who remained behind, who the delay and Amama Babaji, and there were a few outside. They all decided to get together in the home of a man called Kusimboy Jana, which was not too far away. Now there were two groups now left, and asked themselves, why should we bat with this Kaira's man, his man? I want to mention his name because the professor is still around here. Why should we bother with them? Let's join these two groups. So in the home of Kusimboy Jana, they agreed to join Museveni's group with the Lee's group. That is the path, the formal path of the NRM.
Wow.
NRM was to be governed by two committees. One had to be called the National Resistance Council,
Yes.
which would be in Uganda, under the chairmanship of Haji Chigongo.
Yes.
The other was called the NRM External Committee, made up of 9 members. It had been in Nairobi to work on all the external requirements of the war.
The logistics and everything.
Chairman, Mathew Karuhanga. I'm talking of the exact original one.
Yes.
The next, the secretary, Sam Njuba. You might remember these ones.
Yes.
Most of many of them.
Yes.
So 2 of them, chairman and secretary, and then 7 members. Professor Lee, Professor Kanyerezi, whom no one recognized as anyone who had been in this struggle. Professor Kanyerezi, Dr. Ruhaka Narugonda, Dr. Bakulu Mpaji Wamara, Amima Mbabazi, myself. I think that makes up the 9 of us. At first we used to meet in the sitting room of my house.
Yeah.
We had many interesting moments. Anyhow, those are not so important.
Yes.
The question is, how can Uganda settle and become the peaceful, prosperous country that it should be right now?
Isn't it?
It's not.
Because when you look at what Museveni talks about for the last 39 years, he just has a lot of achievements to his name.
No doubt. There are achievements, but there is not the exact peace in the country. There is some kind of cold war going on, particularly between Uganda government, Uganda and Buganda. The Cold War is defined as a state of affairs in which you have neither peace nor at war. You're not at war, you're not quite at peace. That's the state of Cold War. See going on. Why is it that when the Constitution of 1995 was made, Buganda refused to sign it, up to now? And people simply said, the majority has signed it. Let's just go with that. Now that was not the right way to do.
How would they have done it?
In this country, it's necessary to sit down. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, and find out how these different communities of Uganda can feel comfortable within this country. Ask the Samajo, are you satisfied? If they are not, find out why not. Ask the Wasoka, are you okay? And they say, we are or we are not.
Can you find a middle ground for everybody? Isn't that too much and ask for you?
Yes.
Middle ground for everybody?
Absolutely. How? First of all, the idea is how to get these people live together without affiliates. I have a formula, which I think. That day, Uganda will stop saying, this time it's the Uganda who are eating. Or this time, the Northerners are eating. Or this time, the Westerners are eating. That day is when Uganda will be peaceful. We don't lack examples. Take the example of a remote actual country in Europe called Switzerland. Switzerland has a large portion of it made of Germans. Another one made of French. Another one made of Italians. Never will you hear that on this occasion it's the French who are eating. It's the German who are eating. Why? Because they don't have a president. Uganda does not need a president. And the day they are going to close the office of the president as a single individual is the day Uganda will get peace.
So what kind of system you think suits Uganda better?
A system whereby each 4 main regions, each elects a commissioner. Uganda elects 1. The East brings 1. The North brings 1. And those 4 form the presidency. Each is equal to the other. And each is chairman of that commission for only 1 year. And they rotate.
So
There will be no worries about being overthrown.
how practical is that really?
Very much so.
There are 4 people. How can they run?
Well, how do they do it in Switzerland? Are they made of different blood? How do they do it? They just have a commission with rotating chairmanship. You don't hear of a president in Switzerland. And in Europe, it's probably the most successful country.
One would say you're bringing back or you're introducing federalism.
There's no question of federalism in this one. You could have it, you may not have it. Switzerland, they have a federal system. And in any case, by the way, until Buganda gets an idea that they are some kind of semi-independent, still.
No, they have that idea already, that they are semi-independent.
Yeah, but
this is a republic.
They are not officially recognized. Thank you for mentioning the word republic. This country should be the greatest example of a unique republic. Why do I call it a unique republic? It's the Republic of Uganda, which started with a king. How much money does Uganda contribute to what's Uganda's GDP? And you don't have anyone from there in the top 10 positions of the government. Say we are right. They are not complaining, but they are quiet. I mentioned the Cold War. Yes, sir. That's it. Okay. Now, yes, the solution is a meeting where people speak their mind and find a solution, which I'm suggesting. So far they have failed. I'm saying they should try it again and again until, do you know that method which I'm suggesting will reduce our budget of defense to only 25%. Do you know why we are spending money here? So much. We have a huge defense system. It's the biggest. The biggest budget is the defense. Ask anyone in the government. Ask any minister. Does he suspect? Do we suspect that Kenya will invade us one day? Do we suspect that Tanzania will invade us one day?
Not really.
Do we suspect that these Dinkas in Sudan will invade us?
We're actually supporting their government there.
Will the Congo, do you think the Congo might invade us?
So who is the threat?
That's the question. Who are we defending ourselves against? Such a huge defense. The president has passed out 10,000 soldiers.
Every year.
And the cost of defense is 60% of our budget. Put it together. The so-called intelligence groups, you know, they say every 10 Ugandans, there are a couple of spies. What for, you know? These are the things that we must...
You talk about unity. I want to bring in the alternative government, the political parties. As you're talking about uniting, they are divided the most at this point.
Forget the parties.
Okay,
the parties are new in the entire concept of African governments. And these people here who are...
Okay, let me call it a region. Buganda is divided against itself.
No
Mpuga, Chagulanyi, people who you would say are role models, are political giants, and they are fighting against each other.
Which is to the pleasure of the ruling government, the ruling party.
But these are individuals, mature individuals.
If I were in NRM, I'd be rejoicing. The more they disagree with one another, the better we are. The better would be the ruling party.
Yes, and it's a win for them, but I'm saying these are individuals who are mature enough who would say they understand politics, that the more united you would be, the stronger, right? But it's these mature individuals still fighting against themselves. What do you comment on that?
In my book, The Unpopular Ideas, I name selfishness as the mother of our troubles. What you're talking about is caused by selfishness. Here are now two political parties. I will be surprised. Yesterday there were some kind of elections for DP.
Yes, the delegates conference.
Mao was elected once again after 15 years to be the president general of
the Democratic Party.
The main contender was Rurume Waiga.
Yes.
Don't be surprised if Rurume Waiga started a party of his own. Why?
Why?
Because of the big mistake the parties make here. The president of the party is the presidential candidate. One who comes out already feels that he has lost the chance of being the presidential candidate. Simple as that. How do you avoid that? The political parties did not originate in Uganda. Sometimes they behave as if they are the founders. They sometimes feel as if they're the patentees of the system of political parties. Where did they originate? Somewhere in Europe. How do they behave? Differently. The fanaticism here is too much.
Bida calls it the gladiatorial politics, where you have to come off as the only man, the only bull in the corral for you to...
That's the exact thing, you know? And that's where we are. That's the one who comes out as the real bull in the crowd is opposed by the one who says, I should have been the one. And as a result of that, he says, let's break off and start our own.
Honorable, it's an insightful conversation, but I want to come to an end. Mr. Museveni, the president, apologized to Buganda. In fact, in a joint statement with his wife, said, we are sorry to Uganda.
There are two types of apologies.
And Buganda.
There are two types of apologies. One type is called sovereign apology. The other one is political apology. Let me start with the sovereign apologies. And I'll start with giving examples. In 1993, King Philip of Belgium apologized to Congo for the horrors his grandfather, King Leopold III, did to the Congolese. Now that was a country apologizing to another country, a sovereign one. In 1998, President Clinton of USA apologized to Rwanda, and they said United States knew that a genocide was going to start, and they did nothing. 800,000 people were killed. The President of America apologized. That was another type, another sovereign apology. Now let me get the political apologies. There was a president in South Korea called Chang Do-hwan, who was president for 8 years. At the end of his presidency, he came up with an apology. He said, "We apologize to the people of South Korea for the immense corruption that took place during his presidency, and for all the misbehavior, all the misrule that took place." Now that was a political apology within the country. President de Klerk of South Africa apologized to the people of South Africa for apartheid.
Yes.
I think you know about that. Out there in Florida, USA, the state of Florida passed a resolution apologizing to the Black American community for something that was called the Black Towns Attack. The state apologized to its own people there for the attack on the black cities, and even set up a scholarship program to as a compensation for the descendants of the victims. The United States apologized to the Japanese citizens of USA at the end of the Second World War for having collected all the Japanese citizens during the war and put them in a camp because they were fighting Japan. Congress passed a resolution to apologize to those citizens for having mistreated them to that extent.
What are you trying to say?
Let me end with one apology.
Yes.
More than about 120 years ago, the American Navy was sailing past Hawaii. And as you know, those fellows are young fellows. If you saw the American ship called Enterprise, it carries 10,000 soldiers and can go at sea for half a year without coming back.
Yes.
They have everything they have. So you can see, and these are youngsters between the age of 20 and 30 with a few generals. So sailing past Hawaii, they said, well, what are these islands, you know? Why don't we go in and find out? They landed. There was a kingdom called my Kingdom in Hawaii. They said, we are taking over. The king looked at the force invading Hawaii and said, to resist would be to kill all his people. So he said, we give up. The Americans took over Hawaii without the permission from the president, even the knowledge. The president at that time was called Cleveland. The question is, what happened then? America held Hawaii as its territory until Hawaii became a state of USA. 100 years later, the president of USA, at that time Clinton, tabled a resolution in Congress saying that the United States of America was apologizing to Hawaii for disrupting their way of life. The president himself signed it as a resolution from the Congress. Leave all those aside. Let's compare now. If the president was to apologize here, there would be a reason. We apologize to the people of Renzururu for this. And not only that, we are setting up a scholarship program or some kind of program to compensate the descendants of the victims. I would say, now that's a sincere apology. The Parliament of Uganda would pass a resolution that the Uganda government was apologizing to Buganda for the attack on Buganda in 1966. The resolution to be passed, the president would sign it, and it will be a public apology, a political apology of the Uganda government apologizing to the kingdom of Buganda. And not only the Buganda kingdom, the kingdom of Bunyoro, the kingdom of Toro, the kingdom of Wankole.
So what is it that Museveni did with his wife?
This will be the beginning of reconciliation in actual reality.
Honorable, what did Museveni do then? That joint statement, what is it? Because it looks like you're not referring to it as an apology.
Well,
what is
it was an apology, as he called it, but it was halfway. He didn't say why he was apologizing. He did not suggest any remedies. It was just an apology.
Okay.
If we have a man here taking care of our chickens out there, and we suddenly discover that he has been stealing our chickens, and he says, I apologize for I've been stealing your chickens. Then we ask, well, has he stopped stealing our chickens?
No, but I was with General Kulaiji and he said, you Ugandans don't forgive. Because even when they come out and apologize, Ugandans have failed to forgive them.
How many apologies have we had?
Because he said there is an apology that was made in November 18th and 19th about those deaths, those unfortunate deaths of people in the election, the general election last season. And he says, we have apologized. Why don't you forgive?
You see, when you apologize, if you've been taking care of my chickens and you apologize for having stolen my chickens, then I realize eventually that chickens are becoming fewer and fewer. Then I come to an agreement that your apology was a sort of a sham because the chickens are still disappearing.
No, that statement is not about chickens. Let's conclude, sir, with Muhoozi Kainerugaba, General, the CDF of this country, who is commanding the forces.
The general passed a decree on his own that he would not like anyone talking about him. And he would not like anyone talking about his family. So I will not comment on
You are
him.
a senior citizen.
At
least by the benefit of age, you can tell us what you think about the modus operandi, the kind of politics that is at play, especially with Mr. Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who has brought about some strained relationships with some countries here and there.
I said at the beginning that until we close the office of the president as an individual, Uganda will not be peaceful. Why is he? Where does he get the strength, the background? He is the so-called first son. By the way, this is another ridiculous way of numbering people. The first son, the first family. Now, this idea originates from USA, where the wife of the president is called the First Lady. And wives of state governors in USA are also called the First Ladies, but no other. And you don't hear of the first family. Nor do you hear of the first child, first son, first daughter, first grandson, the first daughter-in-law, the first cousin, the first driver. Those ones are not there. You will soon hear of the first pets, saying the president has a dog. You remember Richard Nixon was president of USA, and they accused him of being corrupt. And he said, no, I'm not a crook. The only gift I ever got is a puppy, the dog at home. And he named it. And he said that was the only thing he got as a gift. And if he were to be accused of having been corrupt, that's the only thing he ever received.
Thank you so much, sir.
It would have been named the first dog.
maybe lastly, there is a new phenomenon in the country where people get excited over other people dying, especially those who they feel are well privileged or better than them. The case of recently Cedric Babu, the son to Captain Babu, passing on, and you hear people celebrating outrightly. The same case was on Olanya. What is in the hearts of Ugandans that we have reached a point of having seared spirits that we even celebrate another man's demise? What is in that mind of those?
I knew nothing about this Babu's son. And these others that you're talking about, again, I'm not completely, I haven't heard. See, when he was older, I was young, and he stayed in the village, I was far away from the public as I stay here now. Even where, our the home is, it's surrounded only by forest and monkeys.
Yes,
and I rarely get visitors. So,
yes,
so to a good extent, I'm outside the affairs.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. It was a privilege having you, and I have learned something from you as an individual, but also that Uganda is bigger than all of us, by the way, and we have Uganda has been here, and is going to be here.
If you have learned anything from what I have said,
Yes.
the only thing you should remember
Yeah.
is that if Uganda does not close the office of the president as an individual, it will never settle down. Because there will never be a way. You get one from Buganda, he's the president, and you hear what the others are saying. Those who have been torturing us for years. Get him from the Western, they say, who said Westerners will be the presidents forever? Get him from the North, and you hear what the Baganda are saying. Not those men again. So where will we get one?
Let's wait and see. I'm hoping that I can see that, but it's a long or far-fetched out thing. In the way people like power in this country, to share it among 4 people.
That's the thing. That's the selfishness I'm talking about. I'm saying the mother of our troubles, the mother of our miseries is selfish.
Thank you so much, Mr. Israel Mayengo, senior citizen, former member of parliament and minister in this country. We've come to the end of this conversation. It was Face the Nation. It's always a privilege having candid gentlemen like these ones teach us and give us a version of how Uganda can be better. My name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga. We shall see you again next time. Don't forget the station is the Alternative Digital TV, and we're always here having a conversation with Uganda. Don't forget to subscribe at the Alternative Uganda at Digital TV. From the entire team, God bless you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.